Minister Janet Daby.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I really recognise across this chamber that there are many champions here for children and families, and indeed there are many passionate members that really do want the right outcomes for children that are adopted and that are in kinship care through special guardianship, care arrangements orders and others. But I want to begin by thanking the Honourable Member for South West Devon on securing this important debate, and I share her commitment to wanting the best support for adoptive and kinship children, and indeed acknowledge her sincere interest in this area. Now, there have been many interventions, been many questions of me, and been many speeches, and in the time given I will not refer to each member by their constituency. I will do my best to endeavour to respond to the many questions that have indeed rightly so been put. Now, we recognise the particular needs of adopted and kinship children, many who have experienced trauma, and some will have experienced utero damage resulting in fetal alcohol spectrum disorder and indeed other conditions. And this is why this government has continued to provide funding for support for these children through the Adoption and Special Guardianship Support Fund and indeed in other ways. I want to begin by saying that there have been no cuts in the overall budget to the Adoption and Special Guardianship Support Fund. The announcement was made, and when that announcement was made, I did indeed say that further information would follow. Now, the announcement was further made during recess so that the Adoption and Special Guardianship fund could be opened and that therapy could be accessed. And we had to announce that so that the new criteria was available and that the funding could indeed be open. Although funding has been confirmed at 50 million this year, we know it will not be enough to meet expected demand, and we are therefore making these decisions now to enable us to support the maximum number of children. Families will still receive a good standard of support through the fund, 3,000 worth of therapy each year, substantial amount of support, and will fund an average of 19 to 20 hours of therapy on current costings. And where needed, local authorities and regional adoption agencies can use their own funding to increase the amount of therapy if this is needed. Indeed, the assessments as well will also be able to continue, whether that is the multidisciplinary assessments or specialist assessments, but that would be derived from that 3,000. Now, we have decided to stop match funding and the separate funding of specialist assessments, but as I've said, that would indeed can still continue out of that 3,000. I'll give way here first.
I thank the Minister for giving way and my honourable friend for letting me get there first. The point I would make is in the adjournment debate that I held and the Minister was responding, she made the point, and I quote, support for adopted children is critical and it can decrease the likelihood of adoption, disruption or breakdown. In real terms to people on the ground, this is a cut. So will she acknowledge the actions of her government are going to have an impact on adoption, breakdown and disruption?
Yeah. I absolutely recognise that the threshold and criteria has changed, and that has changed to enable us to ensure that we're able to reach as many children under this current funding of 50 million. I absolutely recognise it is crucial for assessments to continue for these children to enable them to have the right types of therapy. If members will allow me to press on, I'll be able to respond a bit further because there were many things that were absolutely raised. So if I turn now to the adoption and special guardianship not being available to all children living under special guardianship orders. The main reason the fund is only available to previously looked after children living under special guardianship or child arrangements order is that those previously looked after children, such as those who have been in foster care or residential care, may face higher levels of vulnerability and disadvantage compared to their peers. These funds aim to provide targeted support to address the specific challenges associated with their prior experiences. Now, moving to the, there has been many questions also around the kinship pilot and the kinship funding, but I just want to obviously say furthermore about the special special guardianship and support fund. Now, on the 14th of April, the Department announced that the fund would be open to applications with changed criteria, the fair access limit to £3,000 per child per year, stopping match funding, enabling the separate funding of specialist assessments. And where it is assessed as being needed, as I have already said, families can approach their local authorities and can approach their regional adoption agencies. And Adoption England is also obviously working with these regional adoption agencies. And the regional adoption agencies are also looking into, well, we also have a specialist excellent centres, which is a multidisciplinary approach to enabling that there is different types but essential provision that adoptive children absolutely need. I will give them.
Alison Bennett.
What is the Minister's assessment of the level of reserves that local authorities and adoption agencies have available in order to boost that funding?
So we have invested a further 8.8 million for Adoption England, and 5 million of that will be towards the services of excellence. In terms of local authorities, members will be aware of the Children and Wellbeing and Schools Bill, and will also be aware that we are investing in the early prevention and intervention work in local authorities. And in doing so, we are trying to make sure that we support families through the kinship arrangements. And as members are also aware, we have already committed 40 million to a pilot for kinship care. And yeah, give away.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for giving way. The bottom line, however, is that we know that there's insufficiency for very specific therapeutic interventions for these young people. And therefore, as a result of today's debate, will she commit to the Chamber now that she will go back to Treasury and make the case to ensure there's sufficiency for full funding of therapeutic interventions so no child misses out?
So we are in challenging situations as a government, but we are continuing to make sure that we're making sure that there's provision in place for adopted children and kinship children, and we will always make sure that there are certain provisions in place, and that we will continue to look at different types of therapy that needs to be in place. And in response, that I will continue to have conversations with Treasury about the essential funding that is needed, and in particular in this area as well. I would also, I'm very conscious of time and the response as well, but in terms of the 40 million package to trial a new kinship allowance for kinship carers, I have heard the honourable members across the chamber that have put in bids, obviously, for their local authorities. But I would like to say that we will be looking at making sure that there is an expression of interest, a call to all local authorities. And this will be launched this summer to identify which local authorities will be best placed to deliver the pilot from the autumn this year. And unfortunately, I cannot guarantee to those local authorities that have already put in bids to me with regards to that. Now, adopted children and in kinship care should be supported to obtain good educational outcomes. However, many do not do so, with poorer GCSE results than the overall population and higher exclusion rates. Adopted children entitled to priority school admissions plus advice and support from designated teachers. Schools also receive £2,630 in pupil premium plus funding for every adopted child in their school. Both adopted and kinship children can receive advice and support from local authority virtual school heads, and we will fully update the statutory guidance for virtual school heads, including sections on supporting educational outcomes. Now, through the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill, we are seeking to mandate local authorities to appoint at least one person to promote the educational achievement of children who live in kinship care, regardless of whether they've been in local authority care or not. These duties will ensure they receive consistent support to improve their outcomes. Now, there's actually much more to be said on all of this, and obviously very much in responding to your questions. But I am grateful to all of the honourable members for raising the important subject of adoption and support today, and for initiating such a thoughtful and wide-ranging debate. There are many things that I will obviously take away from what has come out of this debate, but I do want to say that in terms of the match funding for the assessments that has come out of your questions, the previous match funding applications accounted for less than 2% of all applications in the last financial year. I just thought that's important just to put that within the wider context. There was wide disparity over this in the country with regard to this match funding, but as I've already said, there are other avenues in which adoptive parents and carers can go to be able to ensure that they can continue to get that additional support that they need for their children. I've listened carefully to remarks of honourable members and honourable friends, and I know that many outside of this House will be very keen to follow up on what has been said, and I'm sure, as one of the honourable members already said, in terms of putting in for a backbench business debate, there will be other opportunities to further question myself and this government on these issues. And honourable members, I'm sure, agree that the biggest tribute very much goes to the parents and carers of adopted and kinship children. And one of my honourable friends has already mentioned, that which has not been mentioned before, apart from when she mentioned it, the joy that adoptive children and kinship children bring to their families, and I just want to acknowledge that, and I want to thank all of those parents and carers who continue to demonstrate compassion, resilience and dedication. Thank you, Madam Chair.